The story begins with a husband and wife. The husband's name was Norman, and his beautiful wife's name was Sarah. Norman was a farmer, so his house was right on the farm. Norman and Sarah had been married for 7 years, but they still had no children, which made them both sad. One day, while they were both doing their own work, Norman's younger brother, Vince, arrived. As soon as Sarah saw Vince, she ran and hugged him. Norman was also happy to see his younger brother. Their parents had died when the brothers were young, and Norman had raised Vince himself. Vince was returning home after a full 5 years. He had gone to the city to study and had returned after completing his education. The next day, Norman's entire family went to the village church. Norman's house was in this village, so he came to this church every week, prayed, and met his friends. That night, Norman and Sarah were at home. News had spread in the village about a child's birth that day, which made Sarah sad. She also wanted to be a mother but hadn't been able to conceive despite many efforts. Norman had a habit of talking to himself. He said to himself, "I know my wife wants to be a mother, but I haven't been able to fulfill her wish. I don't think I can make her a mother, but maybe my younger brother can help me." After this soliloquy, Norman decided he would talk to Sarah and Vince soon. The next morning, the whole family was working on the farm. Sarah was driving the horse cart while Vince was scattering seeds from behind. Norman watched them as he worked, preparing himself to talk to them. That night, the three sat down to eat. Seizing the opportunity, Norman told them, "Sarah and I have been married for 7 years, but I haven't been able to make her a mother." Hearing this, Sarah consoled him, saying he didn't need to be sad and that everything would be all right in due time. Ignoring her, Norman said to Vince, "Now only you can help us. This house needs a child, and you can bring a child into this home." Vince was shocked by Norman's words. He said, "I have never looked at Sarah with wrong intentions, and you want me to make her a mother?" Norman replied, "I know it's a sin, but I will bear that sin upon myself." Vince called him crazy. When Vince refused, Norman tried to persuade Sarah, but she also refused. Both, troubled by Norman, left him alone. They were very upset after hearing Norman's proposal. The next morning, the three started working again. Sarah and Vince decided to forget the conversation from the night before, thinking Norman was stressed about not having a child, so they tried to help him relax. A few days later, Norman was going to the city to buy an ox for farm work. The city was far away, so he was going for 7 days. After he left, Sarah and Vince worked at home. While Vince was washing his face after work, Sarah's attention was drawn to his youthful physique. That night, they ate together and went to their respective rooms to sleep. Soon, Vince came to Sarah's room. Surprised, Sarah asked why he was there. Vince said he couldn't sleep and had come to see her. He complimented her beauty and asked her to let her hair down. Sarah did so. Vince then said, "I can't see my brother sad. He wants a child in this house, and I will fulfill his wish." Sarah also wanted a child, so she started kissing him, and Vince began to make passionate love to her. The next day, both seemed very happy because a new relationship had formed between them. Even though this relationship had no place in society, they were happy. They worked all day on the farm and found moments for intimacy. At night, they had all the opportunity they needed, and passionate encounters continued throughout the night. Within days, Vince fell so deeply in love with Sarah that he began to think of her as his wife. A few days later, Norman returned from the city. He met Vince first, then Sarah. When Vince asked about the ox, Norman said he had bought it but had to leave it at the station due to rain, so he would bring it first thing in the morning. Later, when Norman entered his room, he noticed a strange scent on the bed. It was the scent of Sarah's arousal, and Norman recognized it. The next morning, Norman brought the ox from the station. Vince was happy to see the new ox. After tending to the animal, everyone started working on the farm. Sarah was working in one section when she suddenly felt unwell. When the brothers returned home later, they found Sarah lying down. When Norman asked, Sarah revealed, "I think I'm going to be a mother." Norman was overjoyed. He had intentionally left for 7 days so Sarah and Vince could grow closer, and his plan had succeeded. Later, Sarah was preparing food. Norman was in the field. When Vince came home, Sarah hurried inside upon seeing him. She didn't want to talk to Vince about the child and was avoiding him. Vince wanted to marry her and take her to the city because she was carrying his child. Sarah told him clearly, "I cannot leave Norman." She explained, "I wanted to be a mother, that's why I came close to you. I cannot betray Norman now. From now on, there will be no relationship between us." Vince wasn't angry, he silently accepted her decision. By nightfall, Sarah had told Norman that she was carrying Vince's child. Norman said nothing. His silence made Sarah realize he already knew. Norman had wanted to give Sarah every happiness, which was why he had made this sacrifice. Seeing his silence, Sarah understood everything. The next day, the two brothers were leaving for 3 months to harvest crops in another village, meaning Sarah would be alone at home. Soon, the brothers started working in the distant village. They were to stay there, earning good money they intended to spend on Sarah's child. After a full day's work, the brothers prepared to sleep. A few days later, Sarah wrote a letter to Norman, who received it the next day. That night, Norman told Vince about the letter. Vince wanted to read it too, but Norman refused because the letter was for him. Angry, Vince started a fight, thinking Norman was hiding something. Norman, also angry, hit him first but then composed himself and gave him the letter. Sarah had written, "I love you deeply, Norman, and I want you by my side. I can never forget the sacrifice you made for me." Reading the letter, Vince broke down in tears, realizing the sacrifice Norman had made for the child. A few months later, the brothers were about to return home. Vince wanted to go to the city, so Norman dropped him off and headed home alone. By evening, Norman reached home, and Sarah was thrilled to see him. When she asked about Vince, Norman said he wanted to go to the city. Days turned into weeks, and winter arrived. One day, Vince came to Norman's house. Sarah was happy to see him. Vince had come to celebrate the festival and had brought many gifts. Sarah was in her final month of pregnancy and could give birth at any time. Sarah and Norman wanted Vince to stay with them for a few months so they could all take good care of the child together. Vince agreed, and the three celebrated the festival together. A few days later, Sarah went into labor and soon gave birth to a baby girl. Both brothers were overjoyed. Norman named the baby Grace. The next morning, Sarah had a high fever. Norman set out alone to get the doctor. A fierce blizzard was raging, and Norman got trapped in the storm. When Norman didn't return for a long time, Vince grew worried. The next day, Norman's body was found. He had died in the storm. Fate had given Sarah a child but had taken her husband in return. Vince was still willing to marry Sarah, but Sarah now wanted to focus only on her Grace. So, Vince left her alone. The story now jumps ahead many years. Sarah's Grace had grown up and had a lover. Grace told her lover about her father and uncle. Grace was now going to the city to study. Before leaving, she asked Sarah, "If I meet Uncle Vince there, what should I say to him?" Sarah said, "You tell Vince that we both love him very much." And with that, the story ends. Thank you very much for watching our video.